As we move on to our next story. And Finnish authorities have seized a cargo vessel suspected of damaging an undersea telecommunications cable between Finland and Estonia, as Baltic nations remain on high alert over repeated infrastructure incidents. Finnish police have detained the Fitzberg, a 132-meter cargo ship travelling from Russia's St. Petersburg to Israel, along its 14 crew members. Investigators suspect the ship's anchor damaged a telecoms cable in the Gulf of Finland. The case is being examined as aggravated criminal damage and interference with telecommunications. Finnish customs said that the vessel was carrying Russian-origin steel to subject to European Union sanctions. The cargo has been impounded while authorities assess possible sanctions violations, and a preliminary inquiry has been opened. 2 troop crew members were placed under arrest on Thursday and 2 others given travel bans. The ship is flagged to St. Vincent and the Grenadines, as the crew includes nationals of Russia, Georgia, Azerbaijan and Kazakhstan. EU Foreign Policy Chief Kaja Kallas says Europe remains vigilant and is strengthening protection of critical infrastructure. Joining us once again is Professor Popovsky. How serious is this incident in the broader pattern of infrastructure damage, but particularly the severing of undersea cables in the Baltic Sea? Are European governments concerned that this could possibly be something bigger?
It is serious. It once again suggests that Russia is trying desperately to avoid the European Union sanctions. And there is very little room left for that, because they cannot really export steel or oil through the Baltic states, because they have to pass through the waters of several European Union countries, not only Finland. And also the Black Sea and the Bosphorus and Mediterranean route to Israel is also not easier because of the Ukrainian drones. And that's another problem for Russia. It will be very problematic to export anything from Russia in the near future. And certain European unions are very strict on their sanctions. They will stop every vessel that carries any Russian goods and inspect that and see whether this violates the sanctions. And this also suggests the commitment of the European Union governments to do that. So they are very serious, back to your question, especially if those tankers also produce additional damage, in this case the cables. So it might not have been intended to break the cables, but as a result of that, this will make the European Union very strict, very cautious, and in the future they will avoid such incidents. Also, it suggests that the European governments are very firm on the sanctions generally, and we often hear accusations that some European Union countries continue to trade with Russia. Well, not the governments. Maybe some private entities violating the governmental sanctions on Russia might have imported some Russian goods, but this is in violation of the governmental sanctions. So let's be clear. All European Union countries impose 100% sanctions on Russia, but if some entities in the European Union violate those sanctions, we shouldn't consider that as the countries violating. It's specific individuals privately doing that.
Indeed, and of course this comes under the possible, of course, we don't know for sure, the possible objective of hybrid warfare from Moscow. How significant is that? And why is the Baltic Sea in particular being targeted when it comes to these cable severings? What's so important about that ocean?
Well, this is the nearest part of St. Petersburg. Virtually, we are talking several kilometers here. St. Petersburg is on the Baltic Sea, and this is a major fleet. As I mentioned, Russia has only 2 options to export: through the Baltic Sea or the Black Sea. But the Black Sea is very much monitored by the Ukrainians, and they will spot and hit, and they do this, by the way, weekly. We don't report much about the hits in the Black Sea. Almost half of the Russian fleet has been hit by the Ukrainian drone in the Black Sea. So the only option remained the Baltic Sea for the Russians' export. And certainly, this is where all these incidents happen, unfortunately, which suggests that, on one hand, Europeans are very cautious and careful now, but also Russia has no options left. They cannot export from the Arctic because it's frozen. They cannot export from anywhere. And that is also good news, because that will mean less Russian export, less money will go for the war in Ukraine.
Indeed. Professor Popovsky, as always, it's a pleasure speaking to you. Thank you very much for joining us. We now move on, and South Korean President Lee